뭐랄까 구름이 걷히고 운이 좋으면 투명한 조각의 무지개처럼 떠올라 볼 수 있어서 그때 우리를 인연은 우연히 또 다가왔던 나가고 노력할수록 상처가 되어서 이런 내가 됐지만 마음을 가누려 애를 쓰던 아이를 안아줄 어른이 되었다는 게 자랑스러워. 가끔은 좀 막막해도 견디고 내일을 위해 잠이 들 줄 알아. 이젠 울지 않거든. How you doing? 잘 지내? 그랬으면 하실 수였던 말들에 아프지 말고 돌아갈 수 없어도 기억하고 있어. 마음 깊은 곳에 있어. Where you going? 지금쯤 한때였다면 좋았겠다 생각해. 그래도 어떤 이유가 있을 거야. 어쩌록 난 좋아. 너도 잘 지냈으면 해. How you doing? 잘 지내? 그랬으면 하실 수였던 말들에 아프지 말고 돌아갈 수 없어도 기억하고 있어. 마음 깊은 곳에 있어. Where you going? 지금쯤 한때였다면 좋았겠다 생각해. 그래도 어떤 이유가 있을 거야. 어쩌록 난 좋아. 너도 잘 지냈으면 해. 마음을 가누려 애를 쓰던 아이를 안아줄 어른이 되었다는 게 자랑스러워. 가끔은 좀 막막해도 견디고 내일을 위해 잠이 들 줄 알아. 이젠 울지 않거든.
Good evening, and welcome back to TIS-100, where, yes, I was scared by the next, by the title of the next level. Prime factor calculator. So let's see what it is. Sequences are... Maybe we should have the plot first. Maybe what we need to do is stop the gate from opening. If we reprogram the TIS-100s, they'll report incorrect observations and the gate will not stabilise. How do we get to the other TIS-100s? We only have ours, but ours are theirs. We should delete as much code as we can from them, corrupt them, mess them up so they can't be used. Ah, so maybe this is why all of the code has been messed up. They're not accidentally broken, they're deliberately sabotaged. And Randy has been carefully de-sabotaging his.
Is this a good idea?
So, yes. Shall we carry on de-sabotaging it? Sequences are zero terminated. Read a value from in, write the prime factors to out as a sequence in ascending order. All of our inputs that we can see here are
less than 11 squared.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I was going to say only 2 digits, but yes. On the other hand, yes. So we can anything over 11, we can just anything that doesn't divide anything up to 11, we can just spit out as is. So we don't have to think about dividing by 23 or indeed 71.
I mean, you've got enough processors to just, I don't know, keep. No, that doesn't make sense. I was going to say have a separate processor for each possible prime factor less than 10, but maybe that's silly. You just need to.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to do a fast division here because you don't have any squack memory there.
We don't have any stacks, so we can't use the fast divider we've built before. No. So possibly we have to do this by some amount of repeated subtraction. I'm pretty confident this is a level I've never tried before, because I'm sure I would remember something about my first solution. I think we're now past the point as far as I got in any previous attempt. So the thing is, if we do, I mean, we could try explicitly subtracting 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Because, yes, didn't we end up with some divide by fixed number that just, where we had one processor that just emitted the powers of 2 and another processor that just emitted the corresponding, I was going to say powers of 1, but that's not right.
See your point, yes.
I mean that's easy for divide by 2 at least.
On the contrary, it's the hardest to divide by 2.
I suppose there are fewer numbers in all other cases.
Right, for dividing by 7, you only need to go up to.
But the thing is that we're not really after. What we're after is how many 2s can you get out of this? How many 2s can you divide this thing by?
Yes, but I think you do have to try them one at a time. I think you have to trial divide by 2, see if the remainder is 0. If not, revert to the previous number and move on to the next prime.
I mean, strictly, of course, while I'm kind of starting by dividing by 2, we can always end by dividing by 2, though I don't know whether that's better or worse.
Well, then you output the numbers in the wrong order.
Oh, yes, you're quite right.
Yes, I think you have to trial divide by 2 as many times as you can, 3, 5, 7, and then dump the rest. The only question is whether you're going to do some advanced manoeuvring with powers of 2 times the prime you're trying to divide by, or whether you're just going to say solid repeated subtraction.
Well, I mean, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It's not very many that we need to do. I'm now having this horrible feeling of whether there's some we can just have this do a repeated subtraction of some sort that don't know. Let's keep going through this first. This is going to be one of those things where this one has to be sending things for this one to JRO so that we know where we are, isn't it? Because only this one really understands the loop. And we need 2 copies of each number here. I don't know if there's a cleverer... Of course, we could use 2 processors to allow us to... Pondering whether there's a... Well, let's build what we think we know how to build. Let's see if we can build something that gets the number of 2s out. And then see how that works. And then... No, that's not right. Maybe it is. So, but then there has to be some signal that we've reached the end. And obviously, like, that's quite hard to... Oh, but if we get EZ, that's obviously that's obviously the interesting indication that we've reached the end, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose that's true.
I mean, I don't know quite what we do then, how we then reset everything.
Right, because the thing on the left is still going to be feeding you nonsense.
Yes, but but that kind of gives me the hint that we don't want this one on the left to be doing the control flow, because it's this one that knows whether a particular factor has been dealt with one way or another, I think. Or at least that knows whether 2 has been dealt with one way or another. So if we had it... That's not right. What's happened there? Oh, we actually loaded the input, mightn't it? Also, that should obviously come there, even though we're not going to get to the outer loop yet. Yes, we were desperately trying to divide everything. Yes, that may be a slight bug in that currently we only test after the subtraction. But if we receive 0 as input, what the hell output do we give? I mean, obviously it's divisible by 2. It's divisible by 2 as many times as you want. So we would so quite correctly well, either we just sit there spitting out 2s indefinitely, or we do something else wrong. So yes, probably, yeah. The fact that the code doesn't work if you provide it with a 0 as input is not my fault.
The specification doesn't work if you provide it with a 0. If they were going to do that, they
Okay, that's wrong because I was assuming that A would be here, which it isn't. So that correctly determines that the input is divisible by 2. What it doesn't do is work out what the input divided by 2 is. Because
Because you're just subtracting.
yes, but conveniently we have a spare copy of all the numbers that we were adding up. Only the slight problem is that those aren't actually the numbers we wanted. We want half of those numbers, but we do want the whole numbers when we're doing that add. Yeah, noise of Ben chewing his own finger. That's slightly infuriating because I was going, oh well, we could just do that, and then we'll accumulate the numbers we successfully divided by. Oops, didn't mean that button. Only it appears have I got terribly confused while watching the wrong bit of that. Oh yes, because it does actually get the jumps wrong, so that even that doesn't quite work correctly. But that would just be a case of shuffling all this into a completely different order. I'm sure that would be fine. We would change that to an LZ. And actually, at that point, we don't really know what we're doing anyway. Well, that's rubbish. What have I done wrong now? Oh, because that does actually need a jump A, you idiot. Right. I've got to... What does the... Was I just not paying attention when it sent its output? Right. So at the point when this outputs 2, we have now successfully concluded that the input number was 72. This is not a helpful thing, but if we had been copying half of the value to the right instead, then that could be half of it. But the problem is that the number we want twice here is the input, and not half. We don't want the input and then half its input. So one approach would be to have... Ooh, so if we had this controlled by this, so we could we could make this look like Oops, no. Yeah. O for keyboard macros. Right. We could have it look like that. So the so then if we want to send something to the right, we jump forwards and then backwards. And if we want to subtract the last value, we jump backwards and then forwards. I'm sure this will not cause terrible, terrible confusion.
I'm confused.
Yes. So
Is this like taking advantage of the fact that the number you're dividing by is also the number that you're optimising by using the powers of?
yes.
So that this won't work when you try it for 3 in the next 2 processes.
Yeah, I fear it might not.
Well, can't be helped.
We'll have to come up with a completely different divide by 3 circuit. So then it goes. So in the LZ case, we then would then want to go MOV -1 left. And in the GZ case, we go MOV 1. Let's make it +1 to be a little clearer. Left. And then to get the next input, we then have to do the same in reverse. So that has to go MOV -1 left. And that one has to go MOV +1 left. And I'm slightly worried by how few instructions we have spare now. Maybe I should be watching how this is accomplishing whatever the hell it's accomplishing. But it has indeed successfully divided, extracted a 2 and come out with a 36. I mean, it has no way to get that 36 back.
You're running out of instructions in it.
It's running out of instructions to do so. But it did at least manage to... I mean, I suspect this can be optimized a bit to reduce the number of instructions. But it did at least successfully divide by 2. So, yes, we could... So yes, and then we essentially what needs to happen at the end of that is we need to get the number from here back into here, reset this, which is actually quite easy. That's just MOV minus an awful lot left. And then we start again, and at the point, and we also at some point need to detect when we have a non-zero remainder. Yeah. I'm beginning to think that maybe I need to be less clever and resort to repeated subtraction. But
I mean, repeated subtraction would have the great advantage that you could do everything the same way.
yes, I'm beginning to get a feel for how it might work as well. And rather amusingly, I think it could be done using some of the same infrastructure I've already built. Well, in that, what for instance, if I change this to say Yes, or right on to the next one, or rewind back to the start.
Oh, can you JRO minus lots?
If JRO minus 999 always takes you to the first instruction, and JRO 999 always takes you to the last instruction, because these systems generally, the TIS-100 and friends generally use saturating decimal arithmetic. Everyone is discussing Brighton on IRC. I have not been to Brighton often. I caught the train there on the second occasion it was possible to get a direct train from Cambridge to Brighton, because I missed the first one by like half an hour. As in, I went, oh, today's the first train to Brighton. Oh, it leaves in 10 minutes. That's not helpful. I am at the opposite side of town. Still, I was on the first direct train from Cambridge to Cambridge North. So then, let's just scrap this and see if we can be cleverer. So the idea now is that we do an awful lot of subtraction. Definitely want a salve, because if we end up with a non-zero remainder, then we need to restore from back and do something with it. So then we have a kind of inner loop that goes sub left maybe we want these in the other order actually. So then, actually that probably just happens later in the loop, doesn't it? So then, if we end up at precisely 0, then that means we found a factor. So then what we need to do is get a copy of that factor and report it downwards. Then we need to somehow get the quotient back from over here. So, I mean, we could have this do that. Oh, I'm slightly worried that thus every attempt at doing anything on this side is going to require a yet another moving things out to this side, and that's going to consume too many instructions. But let's see. So then we want to say, please tell me what you have accumulated. And then we'll jump back to the top. No, we will then jump to next factor. No, we need to retry the same factor first.
Yes, that is awkward.
But that's fine. We've now reset the accumulator so we can pretend that we're just continuing the repeated subtraction of the same factor. So then we should behave precisely as if the last subtraction had yielded us a positive value. So that's one of the cases written. That's the if we have just hit 0 case written. So if we have hit less than 0 is the other terminating case. That jump probably ends up, yeah, actually, let's not do that. Let's say JGZ here. We've got 2 cases merging. Let's have them merge like that. Let's write the rest of that.
I think this is the first time I've seen you resort to 2-character labels.
I've used them a few times for. I think it turns out to be quite convenient where you only have a few jumps to label and their case jumps like this to label them after the actual condition codes. So in that case, we just say, give us the same factor again. Oh no, except that if it's greater than 0, we also need to send a message to the right, don't we? Why is that add left? That can just be add 1 and save us a mov. So actually, maybe the GZ case isn't just that just a merge there, unless we do. Well, let's see if the one case here is we have just found a factor, then we also want it to 0 the accumulator, and it could -1 the accumulator instead. And then that would allow us to fall through here, and that saves us an instruction, which is quite important.
I'm having some difficulty with my lifestyle in call.
So then that dumps us. Then we go back up to there and do the next subtraction. So then we have 3 instructions here in which to handle the case where we have gone too far. So that means that our current factor is no good. So we want to restore from backup. Advance to the next possible factor. Reset the quotient accumulator. And damn it, we've run out of instructions. Because we also need a jump to the top of the program. No, annoyingly, we want to jump to L. Indeed, currently we don't have any reason to jump to the top of the program because we have no way of having finished factorizing a number. So like that all looks all right, but I'm going, are there any instructions here I could just temporarily remove and no one would miss them? Actually, we want to jump back to the SAV because we've lost the contents of back at this point. Alternatively, is there some way I can move some of the hard work somewhere else? So no, we have to jump to there, and that does have to signal go back one. So that's necessary. That's kind of necessary. Obviously, we need 2 jumps to take the 2 different routes. There's some way this can't really fall through to anything because it's the only one that sends +1 left, and that's kind of critical.
I've left you recite the traditional way of core power going, where the hell is the temple? God damn it.
So ooh, I'm kind of wondering. No, that doesn't quite work. Oh, no, that does work. So my idea here is that after we have successfully found a factor, our next job is... Oh, it's not quite. Oh, maybe it is. I was going to say is almost factorise the new input. I mean, actually, it could be. It's kind of expensive if we've just found the first
Right, you could just go
7.
Back, you could just go right back to the start and not worry about the fact that
Yes.
remember where you were in the factor list. Yes.
I mean, that's an excellent way to end up right over on the right in the cycle count statistics. But I was thinking thus... that we could have some of the job that's currently done by this right-hand processor actually done by one above this one, so that it handles keeping track of what we're currently trying to factorise and can send us new copies of it, and can be told either keep the current thing we're trying to factorise or move the quotient into the current thing we're trying to factorise register.
I just had a completely stupid idea, but it is literally stupid.
Oh, okay.
It suddenly struck me that wouldn't it be nice if you could try all 4 of the potential prime factors in parallel, and then, but the trouble is they finish in exactly the wrong order. The larger primes are easier to divide off, so the trial division by 7 would finish first and you'd output factors backwards, which would be fine if you had a stack, but you don't.
So then my operations with this would be something like, tell me what we are currently factorising. Start factorising what was previously the quotient. And add 1 to the current quotient and also load a new factorising target. So then from here we go, tell me what we are currently factorising and say, and put it in there. Then add one if we need to add one. If we have reached 0, then pick a new factorising target. And step backwards through there. It's still not quite right, but it is. If we otherwise, no, hang on, that's less than, that's, we've moved on to a new factor. The last one didn't come out, so we want to reset, which is 3. But actually reset will then be followed by I'm confused, I'm lost again. All right, let's think about this. So in the case where we are less than 0, we have overshot, and therefore we want to advance to the next possible factor on the left. We want to inform the processor above that it should reset, which is meant to be 3. But then as it is, we then have it arranging to fall through. Let's remove that fall through for now and do things simply, and then we'll put the fall through back in if we can. But we don't actually want to do that and then jump back to L. It would be much better for us to jump back to the very top of the program, because that saves us an instruction. So that means that 3 should not provide a copy of the current thing we're factoring. That should be dealt with by that 1. So 7 now becomes 6. We haven't written that in yet anyway. So then when we have finished a factor, we send a copy of it down. We then need to tell up that it should keep factoring the current number. No, that hang on, I'm confused. I'm doing no, that the current quotient should now become the new thing we're factoring, which conveniently is already in the accumulator. So that's quite simple indeed. That just requires a jump to T, doesn't it? And then if we haven't got far enough yet, we signal up that it should increment its counter and we keep subtracting the current thing. Right. This doesn't yet get the situation where we've run out of potential factors done. But let's just see what it does do. Right, that doesn't work correctly, because when we start trying to factorize it, when we start subtracting from a number, we need this one to reset the accumulator to 0 first. So that's probably here. But that should also have a salve, shouldn't it? So that salve should replace that salve, which means that 3 is now 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. So 3 should become 5 and 6 should become 8. Right, let's try that. I should actually update the labels as well. So we're now nearing having successfully done the first division by 2. We have successfully done the first division by 2, but owing to doing things in the wrong order, we think that 72 divided by 2 is 35. Still, let's see how it goes thereafter. Because now this should now get us a more useful test case. Because 35 is not, well, we're not just going to keep dividing by 2. Now we'll fail, I think. So we've correctly now decided that 35 is the next number we're dividing. And now everything's seized up because someone forgot to tell someone else what number we wanted next, which is kind of the same problem that we had before. As in, that's kind of related to the we didn't correctly handle adding 1 at the end. So the thing is that our equal to 0 case is wrong. In that it correctly asks left to send us another number, but it also needs to, it does actually need to fall mostly through into the greater than or 0 case, doesn't it? Because it needs to add 1. Oops. It needs to add 1 to the counter, and I think actually I do just need to remove that jump again. Why has that ended up being 72? That's a mistake. Unfortunately, it's a mistake that happened slightly too late. So there's EZ. Let's put a breakpoint there. Right. So that's correctly signalled a 2. Then We're going to want to try dividing by 2 again. So add 1. But then jumps up to there.
Today's morally Wednesday.
And then we keep trying to trial subtracting, and that's wrong, right?
Yes. All the way around here with the big black bin around here.
Because actually we do need to signal to up that it should. We want it to add 1 and restore. Right, I think we do need to split these cases then. But then the... Oh gods, but that means that equal does actually have to send a signal up, and I've run out of instructions to do that in. So, because in the equal case we need to... Okay, in that case, no, we can do this. In the equal case, we need to hang on, no, what? No, the problem is that this processor needs to load the new target. What's going on here? Why is that jumping to T? Am I terribly confused? No, I'm not. That's if we've ended up overshooting when we need to load the target. Here, we also need to reload the target after. So the problem is that actually what I want in the equal case is that we do that-ish, but we also have we also jump to T. So we have to, rather than to L. Because L keeps subtracting from the current accumulator, but we want to load a new accumulator, which will be the new quotient.
If you have to jump to T, you can swap the cases and put it at the bottom, and then you don't need an instruction.
That's true, yes, that will help, won't it? And I can just do that. Whether that even then leaves us with enough instructions, I'm not sure, but it's closer. So what it then has to signal up is actually that MOV1 up is the signal we want, which is you have a new target. We just have to signal left that it should reprocess the same number. I mean, I think I am missing. I am still missing that ability, that adding 1 at the end. But that's now at least working correctly. Oh yes, we've just subtracted 2. Yes. And we can fix that thing by just having 8. No, by having. Oh, we kind of can't because yes. Well, okay. Let's just stick a MOV 8 up in. We've got 1 spare instruction. we emit a second 2, and when we start working on 18, we emit a third 2, and we start working on 9. It's kind of annoying that this thing has...
How does it successfully divide 9 by 2?
Yeah, good question. I think the answer is... we didn't. We successfully divided it by 3.
Oh, okay. That's a better answer.
I think we unsuccessfully divided by 2 and then successfully divided it by 3. But because 9's such a small number, that didn't take very long.
And you didn't have a breakpoint on the
And the breakpoint is only on successfully finding a factor.
Yes.
It did correctly without us even paying attention.
It charged through the bot you hadn't tested yet and just didn't fail.
Yes. So then it should successfully find another 3.
Well, the other fiddly bit here is
Right, and now we have the awkward thing that we've ended up with 1, and we don't actually have anything that handles the fact that we found a 1. I think it will now just sit here.
well, from the top process point of view, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or not. You found a number that you can't divide by any of the primes. You've got loads of space in the output processor at the bottom to discard a 1 if it turns up. All you need to do is get the residue there somehow.
Yes. So I'm not quite sure where this has crashed now. Oh well. So the current situation is that it will correctly find a list of factors, but doesn't really know what to do when it's found them.
So where it hung was it ran out of factors. It was the central processor in the unit. Yes, it is. The central processor was trying to sub left, and left didn't have anything to give it because...
Oh, right, because it had tried to jump forwards from that last JRO, and there is no instruction after that JRO, so it just kept executing that JRO, yes. Yes, indeed. So it had run through all the remaining possible factors. So now the tricky thing is, how do we, given 0 free instructions, detect running out of factors in a useful way?
What happens if you put a 999 at the end of the list of primes on the left? Then you will try to subtract it and something more will happen.
I don't think it will be of any help. Yeah, it just falls off the bottom and gets stuck again. So... And yes, there's the issue that while in this case we ended up with a residue of 1, it will not always be 1. So that way we need to... What we really want to detect is this one falling off the bottom. But we can't just have it return some kind of trap value.
A neat trick would be to deliver the number itself as the next prime to subtract. makes sense. A neat trick would be the
Yes.
'Cause
You mean as the last prime to subtract?
yeah.
Because, like, we could probably do that.
I mean, the trouble is you can't preload. I mean, it has to not be the original number. It has to be whatever you've got left.
That makes it harder.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, that
The
is...
trouble is, even if that happens, you still need something in the middle to terminate the loop.
Yes. So, at that point, we have that the relevant number in the accumulator up here. So we could have this processor send it via this one to this one to this one. Ooh, but this one doesn't really need to know what's going on, I don't think, because it just gets told. Its job is, while it thinks it's in control, its job is really like repeated subtraction of things from whatever it's given from above. So if the top processor can work out that it's time for a new input, and given it can see the residue, it might be able to. Especially if we can use your trick of causing the residue to actually become 1 by dividing by itself at the end. Then it can spontaneously load up a new input, and then we only have to work out how we emit that terminating 0. So let's see if we can pull this off then. So that means that we end up with an extra instruction here that's mov up, that might be mov upright.
Upright, downright, forthright.
And then the slight problem is that after that's happened, we definitely want to go back to the start of this thing. So we want... I think then we want JRO right NOP so that we then jump back to the start. And we'll always go forwards there, but that's not really the problem. So then this one needs to end up doing some slight weirdness because it needs to know when to send that value downwards, I think. Can we play silly buggers with any? I've never had a use for any before. Because, like, the thing is that this one isn't really going to know when it's time. Well, actually, we can do that fairly easily, can't we? Ooh, can we? Well, I mean, if we have... we just have that loop here, and then when this one transmits the accumulator down, it also sends a spare copy left. But first ensures that that's not blocked on that outward mov. Then we've increased that 5 becomes 7 and 8 becomes 10.
One of the strangest lifestyle songs.
Does that then work? First we have to swap those two instructions. So then if we watch that accumulator, it will change as necessary. That doesn't seem to work. We seem to have seized up somewhere. Right, let's arrange that we stop when we're like starting to do that. We break point when we're trying to divide by 7. Because that's, after all, the bits that are well tested. Right, so...
objection to your volume level.
I should be... I mean, I'm a bit quieter than usual. I think my throat is not working. Let's turn my input gain up a bit. Thank you. I shouldn't be significantly faint, but I can certainly hear that my voice is not working as well as it usually would. Oh yeah, let's turn me up a bit more than that. All the way up. Oh, that was a bit scary. I should not make loud noises now. Right, so... Where was I? Yes, I was single-stepping through this bit. So we're currently trying to divide by 7, and we're going to go, no, not divisible by 7. Advanced, try 11. So restore from backup, you get back a 1. Get that back down into there. Can't divide by 11, give up on that. Fetch another copy. We've just attempted to subtract. Okay, yeah, that's probably not going to work, is it? 1. We have thus successfully received 0. And then we attempt to emit that thing again, and obviously we can't, because actually this is only able to send the magic number once, and it needs to be able to send it more than once. So I think that actually has to get slightly more complicated, and I think it should just use ACK. And we should see if that works any better. I have turned myself up all the way now, so I'm as loud as I can sensibly be without extra mucking around. Actually, I've got another gain control somewhere, haven't I? I can turn up. Yes, I can turn up the gain there as well. But I think that caused really horrible noises last time we tried doing that.
Let's maybe not try that then.
Right, so we have now successfully emitted 1, which is the residue. Obviously, as you suggested, the output is going to have to point out that 1 is not an interesting factor.
But we've got like 11 whole instructions to do that.
Okay, and then everything's seized up for completely weird reasons. Namely that, yes, this processor, I think, now doesn't really understand what's going on.
I have to start an entirely new number. What sorcery is this?
Yeah, there isn't actually anything that will ever tell it to do so, is there? The interesting thing is that this processor knows that it has to start a new number, because it got a request from the one below to say, give me the residue. So possibly we can have this one this one somehow signal rightwards that there's something that needs doing. So let's see, what's case 1 here? That's, we are now dividing by a new thing. Oh no, we are now factorizing a new thing. And that's the case in which we communicate here to left. So if left, oh God, I'm now having the horrible feeling I want to move everything 1 square to the right. Oh, we've got space. Well, because maybe this processor actually is the one that handles the input. Because, as I say, it's the one that knows that the processor below it has requested a copy of the residue. Now, I'm also wondering if we stick in an extra instruction here that just yeah, but that may be a different thing. So the interesting thing is that if this knows when the residue has, if instead of just sending the residue left, this processor also got the residue from there afterwards, I mean, like almost that instruction were it not for the fact that it's in the wrong order, this one could essentially send the residue left. If the residue gets requested by the processor below, then we want to fetch a new factor, a new number to factorize and send it right. If, on the other hand, the residue does not get requested by the processor below, then we want to send the residue back into the factorizing machine.
Right, give me 8 people. Rightly engaged in the rush for the bathroom.
So let's move everything 1 processor to the right.
I'm engaged in the slug.
So then, how is this going to work then? How does it know, though?
What happens when you read from any in the processor that got an input?
Yeah. So actually, this may be a bit of a problem. Yes, because the problem is that movac any works perfectly well as a way of saying send to here, or if here down doesn't request it, send to right. But the problem is you can't tell which way you sent the data.
Sorry, I possibly I should go to bed. I was convinced that was a read from him, but of course it was right to him.
Yes, but oh gods, can we? So we could then and for now let's so I'm wondering now, can we do something involving JRO last, i.e. now query which neighbouring processor just sent us we just successfully sent something to. We can, because there is a last pseudo register that is wherever the last any resolved to. And so if the two processors send us different values, then we can tell which of them the value came from. So then this one would say
would say, hello, I received your thing and I'm this processor.
Yeah, and specifically, I need you to load a new value into your accumulator. And this one would say, I need you to tell me your current accumulator. So or rather would probably just say, I need you to just I need you to take my current accumulator, I think.
Essentially, I thought we decided we didn't need 11 in the list of primes.
Okay.
Because you'd need...
Yes.
Because the only time 11 would not be the just output, whatever's left, was if the input was at least 121.
Yes. So then this one receives its thing from left and then needs to instruct processor on the left what to do, which in that case is just keep sending it. That's probably not actually how we want to do this. In the case where we have a new residue, then we want to absorb what we have from the left and then say, please fetch your new thing we're trying to divide from there. But then this one then wants not to wants also to then read back from there, which is actually fine. That just has to jump Did I just undo something I didn't want to undo? I don't think so. That just wants to jump back to the very top of the program to refetch the current residue in case this side has changed it. So hang on.
Good night, stream.
This is not going to work. Quite right. So what we need here is when the processor below requests something, we need to have already so the idea was that this one, when it successfully sends something down, it then fetches a new thing from up. But then that means that when this one wants us to start processing a new residue, this one needs to know to ignore that alleged new residue because it's going to be dull. Is that right? I may actually have to run this just so that I can see where we end up. Because I think I'm getting confused about what's meant to be happening where. So let's just see what it currently does and try to get it going again, and then work out what I actually wanted to do. Something's going very wrong here. So that initial bit works correctly. But that's utter rubbish. What on earth was I thinking putting that jump T back in there? That is a jump L. Okay, why is that not adding to there? Oh, because that now needs to be, that 10 needs to be an 11, and that 10 needs to be an 11. That 7 needs to be an 8, and that 7 needs to be an 8. Right. So that bit's behaving itself at least. Right, so that bit works. So the thing that we need then,
There's the mighty bonk tweet.
so the tricky thing here is, of course, that actually we need. My idea was that when we had a new thing that we wanted, it was that this one would fetch from here the next thing that it was meant to be finding a factor of, and would then start subtracting it. But the thing is that actually it's in the accumulator here, and we then need to essentially signal it over to there and then get it back again. Though I suppose we don't have to put it. Hang on, can we not?
I'm too sleepy. Good night.
Night. Can we not send it left? Dwarf Fortress has silicaceous ooze. Can we not have this processor handle that bit? So currently we save. When we want to restore the thing that we're currently working on, we swoop sav in order to pull it back out of back. I suppose that's always safe, isn't it? So here, but the thing is that here we might want, we definitely don't just want to mov ack down, we actually need to say fetch a new thing from left. So I think it's better somehow if this one remembers the thing we're currently working on. And then here, if we have a new thing we are currently working on, then we somehow send it left. If we don't have a new thing we're currently working on, then we can in fact simply retrieve the current one from left. Which admittedly is which is a trivial operation, or at least which is an operation we already know how to do because it's those two instructions. That then means that we're not using back over here at all, which saves us one instruction. So then what we want to do when we are asked for a new copy of the current target is we simply copy it from left. We simply go mov left down and why are we moving things into the accumulator then? Why are we not just doing mov left down? Well, maybe let's not worry about that for now. Let's try to make this work in the current paradigm, which would make that a mov left ack. No. Problem is, if we get here then AC contains a new thing we're trying to divide by. So we need to get that out to the left. Except that the left, so if that happens, then this is a new thing to divide by, so it definitely isn't, hang on, no, that's wrong, because it might be 1. We might just have successfully divided by the residue. We therefore have a 1 left over. And that will then land us here in the we have just successfully found another factor case. But then what we want to do is not to just stick 1 in the accumulator and hope for the best. We need to fetch the new this puts us in the wrong situation, doesn't it? In that we're now in a state. The problem is that the case where we want to load an entirely new thing to factor is into this processor is the case where it usually wouldn't, where it would usually think it had a new thing it wanted to factor. So somehow it knows, though, that so what this has to do, therefore, is what this processor has to do, therefore, is to send the new value left and either get it back again or get back a replacement. So why would it? So let's see. This will generally be stuck on that mov ac any. If this one has requested it, therefore it will have a new AC, but that's a really unhelpful AC, because, or rather, this side will ideally want to replace that with its new idea of what we should be dividing. So that means that this will want first to throw away what it thinks is an incorrect value coming in from the left. It will instead want the left to read this new value, which it's going to send. Then it will hope that the left sends it back again, because it's about to send it downwards. And indeed, that is precisely what will happen in the usual case. However, in the case where the processor below has just consumed a value, something much weirder will happen. Instead, we will end up somewhere out here, and we will fake this. So we will be here pretending to be here. So first we send some rubbish to the right. Then we accept a value from the left and throw it away. From the right, sorry, and throw it away. Then we provide our new accumulator which we could do by fall through. No, we can't. And then we go back to L. So essentially this fakes that bit of code, but in a slightly different way. Now, I'm fairly sure we have a bunch of rubbish at the start of the program that we could optimize out. But let's see if this looks like it even halfway does the right thing. So that bit's behaving as usual. And we'll stop when it... Right. So now... This one knows that it has a residue of 1. Everything is behaving more or less as normal. No, that's not meant to be -2, that's meant to be 4 now. We have an entirely new and exciting bit of code to run. Try again. So we failed to divide by 7. Then we run into the new bit of code. I think we've ended up in slightly the wrong place. But it came close. We did end up entering that new bit of code correctly. Let's work out what went wrong then. So the division by 7 works as expected. Let's keep going until top left does that. So why is that at 8? We ended up with... Why did we end up with an accumulator of -6 there? I think because this lot is still resetting, right, yes, after... Okay, yes, so there's a problem. When we fall through to here and ask... Actually, let's move that breakpoint a couple of instructions further on. So part of the problem is that we have just successfully instructed this processor to start doing its special end processing, but the thing is that everyone else is still a bit behind, in that this one is still trying to divide by 1. And in order to divide by 1, and it's tried dividing by 1, what is it still dividing by 11 in fact? 7 rather. Yes, it's just attempted to finish attempting to divide by 7, has decided that dividing by 7 is not going to work, and therefore signals upwards that signals leftwards to advance and find the next value, and signals upwards to load the thing we're dividing by again. But the problem is that these have to happen in the right order, in that this needs to fetch the current value we're dividing by, and that needs to get processed a bit by this. In fact, what I've got wrong here, I now think, is that we need to first divide by the residue and then fall out the bottom. So how does that work? That's not going to work because if we don't do that instruction, if we don't do that mov4 up, then this stalls there. At which point, when this attempts to refetch the thing that we're currently trying to divide, unhappiness will ensue. So while this one knows that we've reached the residue, that's all happening a bit early. But we could... I bet that doesn't work either, though. And we need that to be... Yes, that needs to be in the accumulator. We really want this one to stop and wait for this to read the new value. But we can't do that because we don't know what it is. If we spat out a 0, how bad would that be? That might almost be safe. Now, this is an appallingly bad idea. But what does it do? So that should then mean we correctly reset that to trying to divide 1. We bizarrely subtract 0. Oh, and then we seize up for other reasons. Okay, what? Oh, do we need another JRO left? there, JRO right there. Surely not. Well, when that executes, we're then going to oh gods. We then find ourselves somewhere where we want to be able to jump backwards to resend something, only it's going to be the wrong thing that we send. So that doesn't work correctly. I think I may have to give up for the night because I don't think I can fix this. It may require a complete redesign. I'm not sure. Yeah. I think I'm going to say good night for now. We apologise for that clipping. I'm being too loud. I'm going to say good night for now, and we will come back on Sunday and try to fix this. So I'll just turn my volume down so that it doesn't do anything bad on Sunday, and then we will close down for the night. So now I have to speak quite loudly in order to be audible, and I will say good night.